Hello everybody, my name is RagingRaptor and welcome to a new video. Today we are going to look, whoops, I made a tiny little mistake because we're not talking about this tank over here. We are going to talk about the T54E2, just the E2 variant. This one right here, which basically looks exactly the same, just has a different gun breech and no HD model yet. But yeah, this tank basically is already in the game for quite some time. Quite a long time to be exact, but now we are getting a budget version on tier 8. So let's have a look at what Wargaming is telling us about this newcomer which hit the Supertest. This heavy American dude isn't into formality, it's not having a proper name, it's fine with being addressed by an index T54E2. If it had a name still, that would be Mr. Versatility, as this Yank's weak sides are balanced by the strong ones. For example, its gun has a dispersion of 0.4, which is far from ideal. But with an armor penetration of 226mm with a basic shell, the operator of the T54E2 won't have to thoroughly aim at the weak spots of an enemy vehicle. Penetrating opponents of the same tier won't be a problem at all. Sure, the combination of an alpha strike of 390 points and a 14 seconds reload time isn't outstanding, but the sheer ability to dish out stable amounts of damage with basic rounds is worth much. Excuse me, guys. As for the survivability, average hull protection of the T54E2, 150mm at the front is compensated for it by its thick up to 240mm turret armor. Even though the turret still has a weak spot, the commander's cupola, the gun depression of 10 degrees allows it for more ways of hiding it. The T54E2 is reasonably fast with a top speed of 45 km per hour and a specific power to weight ratio of 16 HP per ton. This lets it take key position, benefits from the armor penetration and gun depression angles. The tank is a well-rounded fighter, being a jack of all trades but a master of none. It may assist attacking allies or bolster its side's defense, being sheer versatility on tracks. Again, I really want to point out that Wargaming did not yet specify that this is going to be a premium tank or not. Maybe they're undecisive. It already happened with another tank, which they made into premium. But I just want to keep this in mind for you guys, that there still can be some changes about this vehicle. I sadly don't really have anything to compare this tank to. I could take probably the M41A1 Revalorisé, but I'm not entirely sure if this is really to be fair. So let's just have a blind look at the stats, and well, I'm just going from my gut feeling, I guess. With 1500 hit points, it is a pretty chunky tier 8 heavy tank, and that is... Wait a second, didn't they sell as a medium? That is really weird. I actually thought this would be a medium tank. I made a little bit of a mistake there. So... it's a medium, it's a heavy tank. I'm stupid. I thought this was a medium tank for all day long. Man, oh man. It has a hull with 150mm of armor, 80mm in the sides and 40 in the back. Typical for an American, well, tank in general. Weak sides, decent for all poo-poo butt armor. 240mm on the turret front, 140 on the side and 140 on the back also don't sound too bad. So I really do want to look at this tank, although the values do not really line up, because you can see the turret is much weaker on this version and obviously it's a different tank. But still, I really do want to show you some things about this tank, because the whole armor should be very much the same. And depending what kind of tier you're facing, it can be pretty hefty in my opinion. So right now let's just take a random tier 8 medium tank, or now heavy tank. Let's take a heavy tank. Let's just take the Defender, because we all know it's a piece of broken poo-poo. And now we can have a look at the live modification of this tank. And yes, the lower plate is still a huge mistake, but as soon as you play decently around your holes, you can do a lot of bouncing. But again, don't forget this turret right here. It doesn't have 240 millimeters. It only has 200 millimeters. And the cupola, I do think though the cupola will be pretty weak, and I definitely do not dislike this. The lower plate being a decent weak spot, I also think this is pretty decently balanced. We have an engine of 800 horsepower and a top speed of 45 kilometers per hour and 17 kilometers per hour backwards, as well as 16 HP to ton ratio. This sounds pretty darn nifty. 35 degrees per second hull traverse and 34 degrees per second turret traverse are all sounding decent. What I do like is this glorious 400 meters of fuel range, which is absolutely amazing in my personal opinion. By the way, now because I know this is a heavy tank, because I'm poo-poo in my brain sometimes, we could basically try to compare to the T32, because at the given time, I think this tank could lead to a new tree. And again, they don't specifically say this is going to be a premium tank. And I also want to point out that making this a premium tank, is it really necessary? Really? Is it really necessary? Because, let's be honest, we already have a lot of American premium heavy tanks. To be precise, on tier 8, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 tier 8 premium heavy tanks of the Americans. Obviously, Wargaming wants to make money. I don't know if they're going to do it or not. It could be a noob tree, which I could like. But I don't really think this could be a premium because we just have too many. Let's be honest, we have too many. I counted this one twice because of the reskin. I shouldn't really count those two twice because, let's be honest, again, it's also just a reskin. But you get the point which I want to make. The gun sounds pretty darn impressive. Like 226 millimeters of penetration is awesome for a tier 8 heavy tank and could like basically do wonders to the T32. 390 Alpha also looks pretty reliable. The sad part is it's just a 105mm gun, meaning you don't get the benefits of auto penetrating 35 millimeters or matching 35 millimeters of armor. So we don't really know what is going to happen here. The premium rounds are decent, but they're not overpowered. HE, yeah. The accuracy with 0.4 is okay. Aim time 3 seconds, that's a long time, but understandable for such a big gun. Lastly, the reload time of 13.8 seconds sounds like a long time, but again, with 390 Alpha, it's a pretty decent excuse. And I think about it, T34 has a whopping 1 second, or not 1 second, no, sorry. Roughly 0.5 seconds longer aim reload time. Yeah, I think it sounds okay. Lastly, the 10 degrees of gun depression are always nice to have. So, conclusion of this tank. I first thought this tank is going to be a medium tank because of the tank I already showed you before, the the M48E2 T54E2, no, the M48A2-T54E2-T10123E6. Boy, Jesus Christ, what is this name? I thought about this tank because this was a medium tank, so I was like, oh yeah, there's going to be a medium tank, and I didn't saw that sign, I'm stupid. So for a heavy tank, I actually think it's very decently balanced. Like, the lower plate is very weak against same tier opponents. The turret will sound stronger. It has 240mm of armor at the thickest, so basically those parts over here will most likely be 240mm of armor because this tank does not have boasting these. The cupola will be most likely weak with 76mm of armor, which I think is totally fine when you wiggle it around and it will be harder to hit. It might be too much of a liability, I'm not entirely sure yet. We don't know the damage model. But overall, knowing this is a heavy tank, it looks pretty decent, and let's be honest, it also looks very cool, even though this is not the finished model yet. I'm looking forward to this tank, to be honest. I really do. I don't know what Wargaming is going to do with it. Please don't make it a premium tank, please. Maybe a reward tank, maybe for a bond shop, but not a premium. We don't need another premium, and this could lead to a new tech tree, which I don't know about, but I think Americans had a big amount of, what's it called? A big amount of different tanks there. Maybe, like really just maybe they're thinking of introducing this as a different tank for the T32, like it's with the Jack Panther 2 and the Ferdinand. Maybe they're going to replace the T32 because in theory this would make a little bit more sense chronologically. When you're coming from a 320mm alpha gun to a 390 to a 400 to a 400, you're losing. You still have your weak hull. You start to get a cupola, which then for M1E3 has. The M103, excuse me. The T110E5, but they get progressively smaller and so on and so forth. It would be sad for the T32, but let's be honest, the T32 doesn't really shine anymore. The low penetration rate doesn't really make it that good. So that's a little bit of a troubling problem for this little fellow over here. Let's be honest though, the turret is still incredible thick. The cupola is hard to hit, so if you know what you're doing, you can do wonders in the T32. Nevertheless, actually, wow, Wargaming, you actually modeled here the spaced armor. That's awesome. Why don't you do it on other tanks? Yeah. I don't have anything else to say. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about the T54E2. My name is RagingRaptor. Thank you so much for watching. If the video was good, leave a like. If it wasn't, leave a dislike and some feedback. Lastly, let me know if you like the lighting right now, because I think it's a lot better now with the ring LED. And I talk to you all later in a different video if you stay and subscribe. And if you didn't saw the new A43 Black Prince prototype yet, well, head over there and look it for yourself. Tier 6 Black Prince. Pretty nifty. My name is RagingRaptor. Goodbye.